This is a joint intelligence briefing, Top Secret Tuesday, Special Access Need to Know Wednesday, $5 and $10 levels respectively. I do apologize for having to do this. Fighting some kind of an infection in the lungs, and it's very, very hard for me to speak for more than 5 to 7 minutes at a time. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through this today, one video, much less do one yesterday and today, so bear with me. It is unfortunate that there is something that is such a wealth of intelligence information to cover when I am in the current state that I'm in, but we're going to do the very best we can. This is 9 minutes, and honestly, I watched it and watched it and watched it and listened to it, and the cadences, the topics. Melania wrote the speech. There's just absolutely no way around it. If you've ever listened to her speak, seen her quotes, her cadence, her tone, the inflection, he was clearly reading something that either off a prompter or that he had partially memorized from something that she had written or he had heard her speak. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and go through that language pattern analysis. Also, while we go through the topic matter, it's only a 9-minute address, which also shows that it wasn't written by a professional. So let's go.
My fellow Americans.
Let me get this turned up real quick. Hold on. My apologies. All right, so that's it. All right, here we go.
Tonight I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
All right. Tonight I think he said, I am here speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at the southern border.
Every day, Customs and Border Patrol agents encounter thousands of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country. We are out of space to hold them, and we have no way to promptly return them back home to their country. America proudly welcomes millions of lawful immigrants who enrich our society and contribute to our nation. But all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal migration.
Okay. Illegal, not immigration. Illegal migration. What he is tacitly referring to here is the transit back and forth. And I don't think a lot of people caught this. I mean, they heard him say the migration part, but there's also this thing that if you've ever heard Slavic people speak, and she's not Russian, she's actually Yugoslavian, they have a hard time saying certain words back to back, just like we do. And illegal and immigration, the way the words are formed in the mouth, would be very hard for her to say. Illegal migration would be much easier.
It strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. Every week, 300 of our citizens are killed by heroin alone, 90% of which floods across from our southern border.
Okay, also, acknowledging the fact that the vast majority of that comes through the crossings that'll still be there. The cadence of this, the single sentence delivery of this, is something that is a hallmark of her speaking. It's not one thought that leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. It is just a series of single statements. And when you look at his lead here, not one word. He says, we have a crisis at our border, humanitarian and security. Oh, you mean the large caravans of military-age men coming to invade? No. Women and children just coming here outside the process. And then, of course, he talks about the drugs, as if people will just stop doing drugs if there's a wall.
More Americans will die from drugs this year than were killed in the entire Vietnam War. In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. Over the years, thousands of Americans have been brutally killed by those who illegally entered our country, and thousands more lives will be lost.
And all of that, of course, is just wordplay and number play. Their numbers are actually less than our general population as far as assault and violent crime.
If we don't act right now, this is a humanitarian crisis, a crisis of the heart, and a crisis of the soul.
Okay. I heard that and I literally almost lost my lunch. This is a crisis of security, a crisis of enforcing policy. It's a crisis of staffing and money, but it's sure as hell not a crisis of the heart and soul. This is something his wife wrote because she's so brokenhearted over all the little kitties that have died and all this other stuff going on.
Last month, 20,000 migrant children were illegally brought into the United States, a dramatic increase.
There you go.
These children are used as human pawns by vicious coyotes and ruthless gangs. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico. Women or children are the biggest victims, by far, of our broken system.
Anybody out there who has ever listened to Rush Limbaugh would know what this tactic is by heart, because he has spoken about it, attacking the left for it, for years. No matter what crisis situation there is, you could always make the allegation that women and children, because they're a more vulnerable part of society, are going to be hardest hit. No matter what. Tornado rips through trailer park, women and children hurt most. I mean, it doesn't matter what you say when it's a crisis. You can always add that to the end. It's a psyop tactic.
This is the tragic reality of illegal immigration on our southern border.
Not invading migrants, not inviting military-age caravans.
This is the cycle of human suffering that I am determined to end. My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are the resources they have requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before. The proposal from Homeland Security includes cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration fueled by our very strong economy.
There he refers to it again, unlawful migration, not illegal immigration. It's just tiny little things like this. He's not speaking naturally. He's not speaking normally. He's not speaking words he wrote.
Our plan also contains an urgent request for humanitarian assistance and medical support. Furthermore, we have asked Congress to close border security loopholes so that illegal immigrant children can be safely and humanely returned back home. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security. It's also what our professionals at the border want and need. This is just common sense.
I don't know where this whole idea that they wanted steel, concrete, or why it's even relevant, but the money that he's talking about is only earmarked for about 240 miles of wall. We have a 2,000-mile wall border. I don't think that's what the people who voted for him were thinking or had in mind.
The border wall would very quickly pay for itself. The cost of illegal drugs exceeds $500 billion a year.
A what? The cost of illegal drugs, $500 billion. 1/2 trillion. In a country of 380 million people. Do the math on that, given that we only have a couple 100 million adults. Maybe to say 500 billion would mean every single adult was a drug user and costing over $1,000. Ridiculous number.
Vastly more than the $5.7 billion we have requested from Congress. The wall will also be paid for indirectly by the great new trade deal we have made with Mexico. Senator Chuck Schumer, who you will be hearing from later tonight, has repeatedly supported a physical barrier in the past, along with many other Democrats. They changed their mind only after I was elected president. Democrats in Congress have refused to acknowledge the crisis, and they have refused to provide our brave border agents with the tools they desperately need to protect our families and our nation. The federal government remains shut down for one reason.
All right. At about the 5-minute mark, something changes in the man's cadence, his attitude. I'm wondering if this 9-minute deal was first 5 minutes Melania, and then after he runs her spiel out, he starts to get back into his mode. Because now the breathing has stopped. I don't know if you guys noticed this. He would say a sentence and then suck in a breath, and he could have the same thing I have. I mean, he's only 3 hours down the road. There's this thing going around. And if that's the case, that's just the case. I'm not going to beat that up, but something definitely changes right after the 5-minute mark.
And one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security. My administration is doing everything in our power to help those impacted by the situation. But the only solution is for Democrats to pass a spending bill that defends our borders and reopens the government. This situation could be solved in a 45-minute meeting. I have invited congressional leadership to the White House tomorrow to get this done. Hopefully, we can rise above partisan politics in order to support national security. Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. Then why do wealthy politicians build walls, fences, and gates around their homes? They don't build walls because they hate the people on the outside, but because they love the people on the inside. The only thing that is immoral is the politicians to do nothing and continue to allow more innocent people to be so horribly victimized.
And just wanted to stop there. When you talk about building a fence, building a wall around a home to secure it, if that's your idea, the statistics bear out that really doesn't stop crime. What it does is it creates a false, let me see if I can put this properly. People that can afford to build those big fences and walls live in nicer neighborhoods. Nicer neighborhoods have lower crime rates, not because of the fences. They're just nicer neighborhoods. People that live in lower income areas that don't have fences, there's higher crime rates, not because there isn't fences. It's just one of these things. It's false equivalence. We talk about this in PSYOP training all the time.
America's heart broke the day after Christmas when a young police officer in California was savagely murdered in cold blood by...
Okay, he's going to go through a giant list of something that my students better be able to figure out. Anecdotal evidence. He gives a bunch of single occurrence events as if they are indicative of a greater pattern. The statistics have borne out, and you can look these up, that violent crime The idea that you would be the victim of a violent crime from someone who was here illegally versus someone who is a citizen here, that's infinitesimal for most of America. And when you put them as a whole, they're actually less violent next to regular Americans. So this is going to get 2x'd while he got 2x speed-wise, while he goes through all of this anecdotal evidence.
An illegal alien just came across the border. The life of an American hero was stolen by someone who had no right to be in our country. Day after day, precious lives are cut short by those who have violated our borders. In California, an Air Force veteran was raped, murdered, and beaten to death with a hammer by an illegal alien with a long criminal history. In Georgia, an illegal alien was recently charged with murder for killing, beheading, and dismembering his neighbor. In Maryland, MS-13 gang members who arrived in the United States as unaccompanied minors were arrested and charged last year after viciously stabbing and beating a 16-year-old girl.
Okay, now this is something I guarantee everybody has missed. Everybody has missed. Arriving as unaccompanied minors. How do they know that? Because they didn't try to cross illegally. Those two MS-13 gang members came through and were processed properly. That's how they know they came through as unaccompanied minors. This isn't something they found out after the fact. So his wall wouldn't have stopped that one.
Over the last several years, I've met with dozens of families whose loved ones were stolen by illegal immigration. I've held the hands of the weeping mothers and embraced the grief-stricken fathers. So sad, so terrible. I will never forget the pain in their eyes.
Appeal to emotion, another psychological operations technique.
The tremble in their voices and the sadness gripping their souls. How much more American blood must we shed before Congress does its job? To those who refuse to compromise in the name of border security, I would ask, imagine if it was your child, your husband, or your wife, whose life was so cruelly shattered and totally broken. To every member of Congress, pass a bill that ends this crisis. To every citizen, call Congress and tell them to finally, after all of these decades, secure our border.
Wait a minute, back up. After all these decades, really? After all these decades. So why hasn't he ever attacked Ronald Reagan? Why didn't he attack Nixon? Why didn't he attack Eisenhower? Why didn't he attack Teddy Roosevelt? None of them suggested a border. Why was it not a problem then?
This is a choice between right and wrong, justice and injustice. This is about whether we fulfill our sacred duty to the American citizens we serve. When I took the oath of office, I swore to protect our country. And that is what I will always do. So help me God.
So you are saying that every other president in the history of our country was dilatory. And only you have figured out, Mr. Trump, the proper way. See, people get all caught up in their own emotions and caught up in the, sentiment of what he's saying and not the content of what he's saying. The implicit content being that it's my job as president to protect the American people, and we've never had a border wall before, and we should have had one like from the inception of the country, and everybody missed it but me because I'm so smart, so this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So this was led off with Melania 101. And I'm sure after he got her talking points out of the way, he went off on his own tangent here and dropped right back into psychological operations. We have appeal to emotion. We have anecdotal evidence. We also have, and I forgot to reference it, appeal to authority, when he said, well, Homeland Security put this together and ICE put this together and this is what they said they want. That's just appeal to authority. That doesn't make it right. They are workers assigned to do a job. Their job is not to assess the method by which. That's for people far above their pay grade. So Anyway, 20 minutes, a lot longer than I normally go. Psychological operations, it's a thing, and it's everywhere. Thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.